Number 10. Jason Todd. When Dick Grayson left the role of Robin, Jason Todd took over. He was a tough street kid who Batman caught trying to steal the tires off of the Batmobile. He took Jason in, and in an effort to try and channel some of his rage, he taught him how to fight crime. Jason's Robin was quite different from Dick Grayson's. He was prone to talking back and rebelling against the Dark Knight, and as a result, a lot of comic fans hated the character. It got so bad that DC Comics came up with a publicity stunt where they had the Joker beat up Robin with a crowbar and then leave him in a warehouse that was rigged to explode. On the back cover of this issue, they included two 900 numbers that fans could call into for 35 hours to determine Robin's fate, like American Idol. In the hours that the phone numbers were active, they received 10,614 votes, with 5,343 votes wanting him dead and 5,271 saying they wanted him to live. Due to a margin of 72 votes, Jason was killed off. There have been rumors that someone rigged up a computer to phone in and try and sway the results, but no evidence of this has ever been offered. It's a testament to how intense comic book fans can be that they would have such an intense hatred for a character, but it is an undeniably fun gimmick, letting fans determine the outcome of a story. I'm actually surprised that DC hasn't done anything like this in the years since, especially when online polling is so easy to set up. Jason stayed dead for almost 20 years before he was eventually brought back as the anti-hero, the Red Hood. He has since become a fan favorite character, but it's interesting that if he hadn't been brought back, he would have been remembered simply as the Robin everyone hated so much that they had him killed. If you really want to see Jason shine, check out the Batman Under the Red Hood storyline, where he comes back from the dead with a vengeance. Number 9. Wolverine. To be clear, there are way more people who love Wolverine than hate him. I think it would be fair to say that he's the most popular of the X-Men, and no amount of hate from a vocal minority will ever change that. But looking at the character through the lens of the haters can be pretty fun. In some of the comics from the 80s that Logan appeared in, he hadn't quite developed the nuances that so many fans love him for, and the medium had a habit of making characters very bluntly state their feelings. This resulted in a Wolverine who wasn't just a surly loner, but was always interrupting conversations to remind people what a surly loner he was. For example, in Uncanny X-Men number 139, the team finishes up a session in the Danger Room, and Nightcrawler goes to get the team some lemonade, and Wolvie mentions that he doesn't drink lemonade, only beer. And when he's done, he of course crushes the can in his hand. That's right, he's so manly that you can right off with your kitty juice. It's only Molson Expert for this tough, manly man, which, by the way, has the same alcohol percentage as a Mike's Hard Lemonade. If you're not a fan of the character, it can be a lot of fun to make fun of what a goofy psycho he comes across as. My favorite example of this is in Contest of Champions number 3, when the heroes of the Marvel Universe are pit against each other by the Grand Master in a tournament. Wolverine is put on a team with the Thing and Le Peregrine against Black Panther, Angel, and Vanguard. Wolvie immediately storms off, screaming about how he's a loner who goes his own way, to which the Thing says, okay. He then attacks Black Panther. T'Challa reminds him that this is just a game, but Wolverine busts out his claws and tries to murder him. The Thing shows up and is like, what are you doing? This is a game. And Wolverine yells out, I don't play games. Like, dude, calm down. If you're one of the Wolverine haters out there, I'd recommend giving Old Man Logan a chance. It puts him in a setting that justifies his surliness more than some of the classic X-Men stories do. Number 8. Green Lantern. Hal Jordan's Green Lantern has been a staple of DC Comics for years, having his own series and being a founding member of the Justice League. He has a powerful ring which is able to create constructs limited only by the wearer's imagination. Despite having a passionate fan base, he's also a character that gets dragged a lot by other fans. A big part of this is his various weaknesses. Some of these are misconceptions, but it doesn't mean they aren't brought up. For example, the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott, had a weakness to wood, so despite having a massive power level, he could be taken out by a guy with a baseball bat. This weakness is sometimes misremembered as being one of Hal's weaknesses, but this is a misconception. Hal's weakness is much dumber. For decades, the various Green Lanterns were unable to affect anything that was yellow. This resulted in some really silly moments for the characters, like when Jon Stewart couldn't defuse a planet-destroying bomb because the villain had painted it yellow, or when Batman and Robin painted an entire room and themselves yellow and taunted him while drinking lemonade. The fact that an 8-year-old Robin then beat him up and stole his ring didn't help GL's street cred. This weakness has since been removed, but more casual fans don't know this, and frankly the damage has already been done. This, combined with a disastrous feature film that seems to be the go-to punching bag for its star Ryan Reynolds, has made Green Lantern an easy target for being made fun of and hated. And considering how extensive and confusing his lore is, I doubt enough people are going to pick up a Green Lantern comic to try and prove this conception wrong. If you are interested, you could do a lot worse than Secret Origins Green Lantern. Number 7. Captain America, if you're not American. Captain America is a classic superhero who dresses up in the American flag and then stands up for American values across the world. Obviously, the character is quite popular among readers in the States, and his role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe has made him a household name all over the world. But sometimes he can rub readers from other countries the wrong way. I mean, a guy in a star-spangled suit showing up in your country and lecturing you about how you need to change your ways to be more like America is kind of uncomfortable. It brings up some imperialist, American exceptionalist themes that just don't play in the same way for other countries. It would be like if Guardian from Alpha Flight went into the States and started talking about the lack of government healthcare and gun control in the States. Many would agree, but others would feel like it wasn't his place as a foreign agent to talk about it. Same thing with Cap. This resulted in Captain America's first movie being retitled The First Avenger in international markets, and it's a testament to how well written the character actually is and how well he's changed with the times that more people don't take issue to him. Here in Canada, we sometimes make fun of him, but it's mostly tongue-in-cheek and with love. Check out the Man Out of Time arc if you need a way in. Number 6. Superman. Superman is the original superhero who started it all. First debuting in 1938, Superman took the world by storm, spawning many imitators and essentially creating a new genre of storytelling. Despite his importance, he is often the subject of what I'll generously call think pieces, decrying that because he is so powerful he cannot be interesting, or that he is too morally righteous to be interesting, or that his costume looks silly with the red underwear he wears over his tights. If I had a nickel for every time I've heard this, I wouldn't be here making lists about the top 10 most powerful haircuts in the Marvel Universe or whatever. Superman is strangely considered both under and overrated by the fanbase. Personally, I love the Big Blue Boy Scout, who always tries to do the right thing in a world where that isn't exactly clear. Despite claims that he is too powerful, he regularly goes up against dangerous villains like Metallo and General Zod that are more than a match for him physically. Despite what some fans may say, the fact that he is so powerful and manages to stay so morally pure is what makes him interesting. If you're looking for a way to get into Superman comics, I would recommend checking out Superman Red Sun, where he lands in communist Russia and becomes a dictator. It's a fun Elseworlds tale that makes you realize what he would be capable of if he were misguided and how special it is that he's avoided that path. If you want a great take on his origin, where he's struggling with gaining the trust of the people he's trying to protect that isn't super dour, check out Superman Birthright. If you want a great Christmas story for the upcoming holiday that explores how limited he is even with his great power, check out Superman Peace on Earth, where he tries to solve world hunger for Christmas. He's not for everyone, but I think more of you are potential fans than you realize. Number 5. Jubilee. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not super familiar with Jubilee, but I do know she has the ability to shoot energy blasts that she calls fireworks. The strength of these fireworks varies from story to story, but I think most casual fans are more familiar with her from her appearances on the X-Men animated series than for her appearances in the comic. In the television series, her powers were usually pretty weak, and she was constantly needing to be rescued by the other members of the team. Add to that the somewhat whiny and very 90s dialogue she was saddled with, and it's not surprising that the general conception of her isn't great. Beyond the TV show, she has a reputation of almost appearing in the movies but being cut out at the last minute. Like I said, I'm not super familiar with her because her reputation has made me reluctant to look into her, and I'm busy with my Alpha Flight reread. But I will say this for her, she has inspired some great cosplays. I hear her in Logan's 4-part miniseries Wolverine and Jubilee is pretty good, so maybe we should all check it out and talk about it another time. Number 4. Robin in general. We've covered Jason Todd already, but a lot of fans are not fans of the idea of Robin in the slightest, and I kinda get it. Batman is this dark, brooding vigilante who scares the crap out of criminals while fighting a grisly collection of rogues who leave a trail of murder and mayhem in their wake. Robin is a small child with no pants, in pixie boots, who makes quips and wears bright colors. On paper, it shouldn't work. Due to him being so strongly associated with the 60s TV show where he was played by Burt Ward, and his appearance in the much maligned Batman and Robin, played by Chris O'Donnell, many fans have written Robin off as a relic of the past, which only makes the series worse. Fans love to make fun of his costume and the silly aspects, but I think they're missing out on a great dynamic of a stoic Batman trying to wage his war while raising an adopted son and keep him safe. When it's done right, the relationship between Batman and Robin feels kinda like Kratos and Atreus from the God of War franchise. Strained, but developing into a healthier dynamic across the story. If you want to see a story that is true to the characters but still explores the moral implications of bringing a child into Batman's world, maybe pick up Robin Year 1. Number 3. Hawkeye. Despite having been one of the most consistent members of the Avengers and having been a major character in the various MCU movies and eventually getting his own television show on Disney+, Clint Barton is a lot of fun to make fun of. His whole deal is that he's an expert marksman who uses various trick arrows to take out his enemies with incredible shots. Despite this, it's pretty common for people to complain that he doesn't really bring much to the team. I get it. If he runs out of arrows, he's toast. If his bowstring breaks, he's just a guy. This is one of those characters who I think we make fun of because it's fun, more so than because it's accurate. I mean, Black Widow has a gun and some fancy armbands, but she doesn't get nearly as much grief. Batman is a normal human, but he's one of the most popular members on his team. This probably isn't helped by the fact that not all of Hawkeye's costumes have been winners, with the pantsless skirt look being particularly egregious. Also, Jeremy Renner, who plays him in the movies, is kinda linked to the character, and the constant jokes in the movies about Hawkeye and Jeremy Renner's own antics, like the Jeremy Renner app, make Hawkeye an easy target. If you want to give him a chance, pick up any of Matt Fraction's work on the character. It was a massive influence on the Disney Plus show. Not that they credited or paid him for it, of course. Number 2. George Clooney's Batman. After the parental outrage spawned by one of my favorite Christmas movies, Batman Returns, Tim Burton was taken off the Batman franchise by Warner Brothers. His replacement, Joel Schumacher, was tasked with making the franchise more family-friendly and toyetic. He pulled this off with Batman Forever, in which Val Kilmer's Batman fought Jim Carrey's Riddler, while also dealing with Tommy Lee Jones' Two-Face and the introduction of Robin. The film leans more into the Silver Age version of the characters and is wacky and weird, but honestly pretty rad. It's no masterpiece, but it's a solid take on the material. Plus, Val Kilmer is the Batman I can most picture having a shirtless sword fight with Ra's al Ghul. It was a big success, and the studio insisted on rushing out a sequel. Val Kilmer chose not to return, and George Clooney got the role. While Forever was a family-friendly film with some darker elements, Batman and Robin was pure camp, leaning into the 60s version of the character for inspiration and being designed more to sell toys than to tell a cohesive story. One of the most dunked on elements of this film is Clooney's Batman. He's constantly making jokes, can barely move in the suit, and perhaps most infamously has prominent nipples on the costume. I mean, so did Val, but they were much more prominent this time round. The movie was not well received, and it put the franchise on ice for nearly a decade. Clooney apologizes for the film whenever he gets a chance and claims that he is the man who nearly killed Batman. But is he deserving of so much hate? It was my favorite movie as a kid, and personally, I'd rather watch it than BVS because I think it's a lot of fun. But I'm not gonna stand here and say it's some hidden masterpiece. But I'd recommend checking out the scene at the end where he convinces Mr. Freeze to help him cure Alfred's generic movie disease. He uses his compassion to connect with Victor and helps him rediscover his humanity. This is the only live-action version of the character who brings this compassion for his enemies to the screen, which is weird because it's a really important part of the character. So while he's still probably the worst Batman overall, he does deserve some props for this moment. Number 1. Aquaman. He talks to fish. Come on! Aquaman is so much fun to hate, due to his most mainstream appearance for years being in the Super Friends TV show, and the fact that his original comics could be really silly. Aquaman will never really get the respect his ride or die fans feel he deserves. Yeah, in the modern comics he can summon massive creatures of the deep, but I'd rather remember him for riding dolphins and hanging out with an octopus named Topo. The fact that he fights villains like the Fisherman, who's a guy who uses a fishing rod and trained dolphins to help him smuggle illicit substances into France? I mean, come on! Aquaman has such a goofy reputation that the movie felt the need to cast the toughest looking man alive, Jason Momoa, as the character to try and counter that. But as great as Jason is, it's still Aquaman. When I think of Aquaman, I picture the robot chicken version of the character before I picture the movie version. If you want to read some Aquaman, check out the trench run on the character, but as badass as they try to make him, it's still Aquaman.
Number 10. Thor and the Avengers. During the Fear Itself event, Thor was struggling with his place in the world. He was hated because the events of Siege, while not his fault directly, had not only caused destruction in Asgard, but also in neighboring Earth residing communities. Many of the people living in one of the towns resented the superhero community for causing danger to come to them. We've seen this a lot actually in movies and comics too. Some had their homes destroyed and couldn't even afford to rebuild, choosing to sell and move out rather than stay and wait for the superheroes to attempt to save the day again and help them rebuild. Not all of the town felt this way, but then a coming war between Midgard and Asgard also was approaching, fueling some of the hate from the public in regards to Thor and the Avengers team. Of course, Asgard was only aiming to destroy Earth to prevent the serpent from feasting on all of the humans' fears and becoming even more powerful. But this only added insult to injury, as the serpent, was also already bent on conquering and devouring Earth himself. I mean, Thor recovered, but this was a pretty tough time for the Thunder God and a pretty tough time to be anyone from Asgard or any sort of Norse mythology. In the end, it was really only his self-sacrifice that managed to redeem him, cause he died. But then he was okay. You know how it goes. Number 9. Scarlet Witch. Okay, so Scarlet Witch might not be as hated as some when it comes to the general public, but she sure has had her share of hate when it comes to the mutant population. In issue number 7 of 2019's X-Men, mutants even expressed their hate as part of a ceremonial rite of passage called the Crucible that involves revisiting her story. Young mutants who have likely only experienced what happened as a story profess their hatred for Wanda and call her Pretender. Pretender, pretend her. I hate her so much. I hate her so much. And I'm like, no, she wasn't meaning to be a pretender. And before this, Rogue was the one who led the charge when it came to the mutant community blaming Scarlet Witch. Rightly, albeit maybe not fairly, for the whole M-Day ordeal and threatening the very existence of mutant kind. Number 8. Green Lantern. When comics made the choice to turn Hal Jordan into Parallax and had him basically threaten the entire DC universe, they also created a world of hate for him, with some readers but mostly within the comic book world, and especially in the realms of the superhero community. Even today, more than 20 years later, people still bring this up in the comics. People are not over it. They're like, remember that time you pretty much almost killed everybody? He's like, geez, guy can't get over that stuff. Number 7. Silk. Silk is Cindy Moon. She has similar powers to Peter Parker's Spider-Man, including a built-in danger sense, but she can actually also produce her own organic webbing, which I think actually is really cool. Hers is probably the least gross, I think. She even sometimes uses the skill to spin herself a disposable silk suit spider costume. After her and Peter dated or hooked up for a bit, she ended up settling back into her own life and searching for her family. She had been locked up in a bunker for years, long story. Anyways, like Peter much later on, she also got some of the J. Jonah Jameson treatment when it came to her superhero persona of Silk. Though even Jameson himself very much liked Cindy for a time in volume 1 of her series when she was working for him. Number 6. Spider-Man. He's a menace! At least that's what JJ would have us think. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of people in New York read the Daily Bugle and trust what it has to say. So when they do stories about Spider-Man being a criminal, a murderer, a dang menace, people are inclined to believe those words, which has led to a lot of problems for Spider-Man. And let's not forget the amount of times people have tried to frame him. Right from the beginning, Chameleon himself tried that ploy, and we've seen it happen a few more times in the comics as well. He's just so frameable, Spider-Man, isn't he? Number 5. Deadpool. While movie-going audiences may love Deadpool, not everybody does. Not only is he considered a major menace within the superhero community, who no one really wants to team up with, sadly, but his disregard for human life and his violent nature also make him feared by your average civilians in the comic book world as well. Number 4. Booster Gold. Although he does for a time end up achieving celebrity status, Booster Gold is still probably one of the least liked superheroes across the board in the DC universe. Likely because his heroics all appear to be for the fame. This doesn't of course stop him from becoming famous, but once people find out that he's kind of a sham with stolen future tech and yet a man from the future with really no relevant information to share with those in the past, many of the public often seem to be finding themselves rolling their eyes at him as much as the superhero community does. So really no one likes Booster Gold, poor dude. Number 3. Batman. Now I know what you're thinking, wait, but everybody loves Batman. I would offer that more people fear him than love the Bat, and while he may be remarked as a hero by civilians in Gotham, this isn't always the case. In Christopher Nolan's Batman universe, Batman even had to go into hiding at the end of Dark Knight after choosing to take the fall for murders attached to Harvey Dent's descent into madness and transformation into Two-Face. Even though Commissioner Gordon knew Batman was innocent, he was forced to pretend to pursue him and publicly label Batman a criminal and a murderer. Batman himself understood the importance of maintaining the faith people had in Dent and in the system. To protect Gotham from devolving into chaos like the Joker wanted, the system and those who operated within it needed to be viewed as the real heroes at this time. And in many alternate universes, not everyone who has played the role of Batman has acted as heroically as the main continuity Bruce Wayne has. In the Tales from the Dark Multiverse series, we get to see a world where Azrael stayed as Batman and turned Gotham into an ironclad, fascist-ruled dystopian nightmare. And in this reality, even when Bruce does get the title back, his views and approach appear to be just as bleak and horrifying. It's like, oh, actually maybe now Bruce is worse. Bruce got messed up! Yo, that whole series is messed up. If you guys want to read something messed up, go read it. Number 2. X-Men. Or rather, really, just all of mutant kind, even. Any superhero that is a mutant is automatically hated. Just for being a mutant. Why? Because racism. Although mutants were originally created from a writing standpoint to get rid of the nuisance of an origin story, explaining away any need for one with the simple phrase, they're a mutant, people quickly started drawing parallels between mutants and the civil rights movement, which was really heating up at the time. Although it's hard to pin down the exact starting date, a big moment for the civil rights movement first happened in 1955, when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white passenger on a bus in Montgomery. The first issue of Uncanny X-Men was released in 1963, 8 years later, and people's minds started to unite the two causes, making the fictional mutants the parallel for all the real-world races that had experienced racism. And people's minds started to unite the two causes, making the fictional mutants the parallel for all real-world minorities that had experienced racism. As such, the mutants themselves have to face a bigger world of hate in the comics since their introduction, fighting the good fight for mutant rights. They likely have had actually more hate groups than one could even count. I don't even know how many hate groups they had. I know it's a lot. I could definitely list at least 10 of them. Number 1. Watchmen. In the series Watchmen, superheroes are constantly criticized. Originally, the supers actually had to agree to disband due to the public's opinions of their existence. Ozymandias' whole plan is to put supers back on top, creating a situation where they can be seen as saving the day, and in saving the world, after kind of terrifying it, bringing everyone together to create a time of peace. Part of his plan is even to make Dr. Manhattan hated by everyone to get him out of his way, which worked. That worked pretty well. Also, Dr. Manhattan is just kind of like humanity, what is that? But even Adrian Veidt's brilliant master plan doesn't end up panning out when Rorschach's journals are published, revealing that Ozymandias was the one responsible for the alien squid attack on New York. As a result, supers become even more hated and Adrian Veidt is forced to go into hiding. So really the Watchmen universe, just no one likes the Watchmen. I mean, I like the Watchmen, but I don't count.
Number 10. Gambit. Now this one is interesting because Gambit has been a part of the X-Men. He's generally one of the more famous ones, but that hasn't stopped him from getting, annoyed with them. It's even gotten to the point where he turned on the team before because he believed he was in the right and they were in the wrong. Though, he was tricked by Mystique, and to be fair, he did start out as a villain of sorts and eventually made his way over to the good side. So he wasn't raised in the X-Mansion and like a lot of the other mutants. Also, like Punisher, he also has a rivalry with Wolverine. The two of them have had some very intense duels in the Danger Room, and I mean intense. Number 9. Punisher. To be quite frank, you get it? Because his name is Frank Castle, and be frank is a saying, and I'm definitely the first person to ever make that joke. Like, ever. Okay, but back to my main point. Punisher hates a lot of people, but he has feuded with, the X-Men from time to time. Over the years, they have disagreed. Punisher has a very clear way of doing things, and that doesn't always line up with how the X-Men operate. He's also had beef with Wolverine on several occasions, which leads the two to fight each other. I mean, the Punisher even shot him in a not so pleasant place. Oh man, just thinking about that, yikes. Like, I know he can regenerate, but ouch. That's, ugh. Number 8, Iron Man. This one isn't a big surprise. Tony has clashed with a lot of superheroes. Civil War. One mutant who Iron Man has clashed with more so than others is Namor. The two have fought multiple times throughout the years, and during the Civil War event, Iron Man specifically told the X-Men just to stay out of it because clearly they didn't all agree. Number 7, Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a likable guy, but that doesn't mean he gets along with everyone. He's had disagreements with the X-Men a few times. I mean, who hasn't, right? Clearly this list. Mostly with Wolverine, again, when the two of them were both Avengers. They were always bickering and could barely stand to be in the same room. Also, in season 2 of the 90s Spider-Man animated series, oh god, man, that show. Love that show so much. During the show, Spider-Man had a run-in with the X-Men in season 2, and when he started to have a problem with mutation. And let's just say things didn't go very smoothly. Multiple fights broke out between Spidey and multiple members of the X-Men. Number 6, Captain Marvel. Carol Danvers isn't the biggest fan of the X-Men. Well, not so much the X-Men in general, more like one specific person, Rogue. The two of them have had a long history of hating each other. When Carol Danvers returned to the Marvel Universe after a brief period away, she didn't have her memories or powers. She was later brought to Xavier to see if he could unlock her memories. And he did. Mostly. There were some that were permanently lost, and it turns out the culprit was none other than a teenage Rogue, who at the time was not working with the X-Men. Rogue used her abilities on Carol far longer than she should have, which ended up wiping her memories and taking away her abilities. Carol ended up getting, her newer cosmic powers later on, and Rogue eventually joined the X-Men. And you would think that time would have healed all those wounds, but no. The two still don't really like each other all that much. Number 5, the Fantastic Four. Over the years, all members of the Fantastic Four have had some sort of issue with the X-Men. But the reason I'm choosing to group them together as one is because of a fairly recent storyline between the two Marvel teams. It has to do with Reed and Sue's son, Franklin Richards, who is a mutant, a very powerful one. And in this new story, the two teams are going against each other because they both have a different idea of what to do with him. The X-Men believe that he belongs with them, but they also secretly want to study him because his powers are slowly depleting, and Xavier is worried it could start to have effects on other mutants. Meanwhile, the Fantastic Four believe Franklin should stay with them because he is a part of their family, but Franklin believes that his father is lying to him. Hoo-hoo, drama. Reed is trying to look for a cure to stop Franklin's powers from depleting, but Franklin believes Reed secretly wants his powers to be gone forever. Number 4, Blade. Blade's feud with the X-Men comes mostly from the Curse of the Mutant storyline, where Blade and the X-Men were working together to help with the vampire problem. Needless to say, things didn't go very well. Blade didn't really get along with a lot of them because Blade's mission is to kill vampires. But when Jubilee turned into one, Blade felt that, he had to take matters into his own hands and, just kill her. But obviously the X-Men disagreed and wanted to protect their own. Number 3, Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch is a complicated one because technically she is a mutant and was the daughter of Magneto. But then Marvel kind of changed her origin so that she wasn't anymore. It's all a little bit weird. She is also primarily an Avenger and even ended up with, fellow Avenger Vision, and they had their own kids. But her disagreements with the X-Men have varied over the years. There was even a point during the House of M storyline where she used her powers and essentially took out almost the whole mutant community. So that's pretty big, if you ask me. And I know you didn't ask, I wanted to say it anyway. Number 2, the Hulk. Hulk doesn't get along with a lot of heroes. We all know that. To be fair, a lot of times people are kind of unfair toward him. I mean, they did send him away, which gave us Planet Hulk and World War Hulk, but his feud with the X-Men has been the cause of some very major fights, specifically Wolverine. Man, I am sensing a pattern here. Why is it always so many people are just, oh, You know, I don't like the X-Men, but more specifically, you know, Wolverine. The Hulk versus Wolverine fights are usually always legendary. I mean, that was how Wolverine was first introduced during the Incredible Hulk 181. The two of them fought in the forests of Canada. Oh, Canada. Hulk even ripped Wolverine in half in Ultimate Hulk vs. Wolverine. Their feud also spawned the 2009 animated film Hulk vs. Wolverine. Is it weird that I kinda want them just to keep hating each other? I know, we get so many epic moments that way. Although, you know, it is cool when they do decide to occasionally team up together. Number 1, Deadpool. Deadpool. Man, seriously. Deadpool's just awesome. You know, he's just one of those unique and crazy characters, and not just in the Marvel universe, but in comics in general. There's no one else like him. Deadpool and the X-Men have had lots of encounters over the years, mostly because, you know, he doesn't really agree with what they do and they don't really agree with what he does. It's also been the inspiration of the Deadpool and X-Men live action films. In Deadpool 2, the main X-Men are specifically hiding from him because they just don't want to associate themselves with him. And even when he does join the team, he ends up killing someone, and Colossus, you know, Colossus just doesn't take that well. So at the end of the day, the two of them don't really get along, and to Deadpool, you know, that's completely fine.